Come over here, have a moment with me. My name is Miss Lizzie. I don't ever smoke the dizzy, but we can always share some ditties. It's just a cup in time. This song doesn't have to rhyme. Life's all of us, not every moment we can be feeling fine. I wanna share a moment, just a second if you will, maybe even a cup of thrill. We could share this performance. It's tea time, come sit with me.
Hi guys, Miss Liz back in the house, and we have Amber Frazier in the house, and we're going to be talking about battle insights. That's what we're going to be talking about, but we're also going to be talking about her tea, and her tea is for City, Conviction, and Reckoning. That is the tea that we are serving tonight in the house. But before we get started, you guys know how Miss Liz rolls. Get over to all those platforms: Facebook, TikTok, LinkedIn, Instagram, Clapper, Lemonade, Blue Sky, all of those good platforms. And also jump over to the podcast apps: Podbean, iHeartRadio, Listen Notes, Deezer, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, all those good platforms. Give those a like, follow, and subscribe. And if you follow and you notice that the guests are on those platforms, give those a like and follow us as well, because that's how we make a difference together, by supporting one another. Then jump over to babyboomers.org. Miss Liz has been partnered with them for over 3 years. And if you're looking to be on different podcasts and get your stories out there, there's over 50 different platform hosts that are on that platform. So you can reach out and pitch to them as well and see if you get featured on some of those shows as well. I like supporting all of my colleagues out there in the podcast world. So let's get started with disclaimer and then a beautiful intro. And then we're going to get Amber in here and we're going to spill some tea and have some fun with you guys tonight. Disclaimer for Miss Liz's Tea Time live show. Miss Liz's Tea Time is a global platform dedicating to sharing real life stories, diverse perspectives, and meaningful conversations that inspire awareness, healing, and connection. Miss Liz is going live using StreamYard. Before leaving a comment during the live broadcast, please grant StreamYard permission to display your name at StreamYard.com. Please be advised that all the content brought forward during any Tea Time show is presented in good faith. However, discussions may include opinions, beliefs, and perspectives that do not necessarily represent the views of Miss Liz or the Tea Time platform. Information shared by guests is based on their own experiences and is perceived to be accurate at the giving time of airing. All guest viewers and participants are responsible for using their own good judgment when considering any action that may relate to these discussions. Some episodes may cover sensitive topics, including but not limited to trauma, abuse, grief, mental health, and other emotionally triggering subjects. Listeners' and viewers' discretion is strongly advised. Tea Time with Miss Liz is an open discussion forum designed to offer insight, inspire awareness, and create connection. It is not a substitute for professional, medical, legal, or therapeutical advice. If you require professional support, please seek assistance from qualified professionals or trusted resources in your area. If you have any questions regarding this disclaimer or the content of the discussion, you are welcome to contact me, aka Miss Liz, directly at my email at bookingmissliz@gmail.com or visit my link tree at Miss Liz's Tea Time. By choosing to participate in, comment on, or view these live shows, you acknowledge and accept this disclaimer. Your participation is entirely voluntary, and Miss Liz welcomes you to join the conversation with an open heart. And if at any time you feel this platform is not right for you, I respect your wishes and decision and welcome you back whenever you are ready. Tea Time with Miss Liz is serving truth and awareness one cup at a time. Well, welcome to Tea Time with Miss Liz, where every conversation reminds us that meaningful change begins when we are willing to listen, learn, and understand one another. Today, we are honored to welcome a visionary leader who is challenging the way we approach conflict, communication, and human connection. Please join me in welcoming Amber Frazier-Finkelstein, CEO, founder of Battle Insights, strategist, speaker, and advocate for building bridges where others see barriers. Amber's mission is simple yet profoundly impactful. You avoid the divide. She breaks the patterns and builds across it. In a world where disagreement often creates distance, Amber helps individuals, organizations, and leaders recognize hidden patterns, navigate difficult conversations, and transform conflicts into opportunities for understanding, collaboration, and lasting change. Her work reminds us that true leadership isn't about winning every battle. It's about creating environments where people feel heard, respected, and empowered to move forward together. Today, we'll explore breaking unhealthy communication patterns, leading through empathy and understanding, turning conflict into connection, building stronger teams and relationships, and why curiosity is more powerful than assumptions. Amber reminds us that every conversation has the potential to either deepen division or build a bridge towards understanding. So grab your favorite cup and join us for a meaningful conversation filled with insight, courage, leadership, and the real TEA, truth, experience, and awareness. Let me get Amber in here. Let's spill some tea. Welcome, Amber.
Hi there.
It is a pleasure to have you. We got to know each other a little bit last week, and tonight we're going to get to know each other a little bit more. So Amber, if you could share with my listeners out there a little bit on who Amber was as a little girl and who Amber is now.
Who Amber was as a little girl is pretty much who I am now. I was outspoken, but not as aggressive. I was not hard-headed, but I didn't listen probably as much as I should have. I was able to be who I wanted to be, but that was also built in an environment of really honest, aggressive communication, and I've taken that with me here. No, I'm pretty much the same person I was when I was a little kid growing into a teenager. Yeah, and not in a bad way. Like, I'm curious. I play video games. I read comic books. I like punk rock and hardcore music. I like my family. That's what I got.
So Amber, today you're leading in the leadership world. What inspired you to create the Battles Insight?
Well, 3 years ago, my husband went through a change due to COVID, a lot of it, and he had to close his business of 16 years. And when that happened, I did freelance writing, mostly short stories and some corporate, but he was largely the breadwinner, and I did most, if not everything, at home, which was fine. And when that happened, we had to come to understand what our house would look like if our roles would change. And that happened over time, but it wasn't very cut and dry, especially in the beginning. And when we started talking about how he felt about what was going to transition, even though he already had a new company, what my role was going to be within the house, things became a little more tense. And on the site, we have a short ebook kind of outlining this a little bit more, but he expressed something to me very vulnerably and in earnest, and I responded with how I thought he should feel, what I think he should think, and that his feelings and his thoughts were wrong to listen to mine. And in my head, it didn't sound like that. It sounded like, oh, that's not true. You're this. You should feel this way. And I remember looking at him after, I had to say what I had to say. And I don't know really ever how to explain what I saw, but I don't think I ever thought I would talk to my husband that way. And I thought I was doing the right thing. And it was probably one of the worst feelings in the whole world. And it left me thinking, oh my God, if I had heard somebody say that to me, like, how angry would I be? How much would I hate what they said? Would I think that they didn't know who I was? And he didn't do any of that. But that's when I realized we were going to have to figure out a way to not have to tiptoe around all the really tense conversations. And we were going to have to learn how to share each other's responsibilities, because it was no longer cut and dry. He was one, I was the other. We had to be both. And at one point, even had to switch completely.
So how did you get the name Battle Insight?
Boss battles. Like when you play video games. I was teaching, not teaching. I was coaching like executives, founders about a concept I came up with called ladder amnesia. And it's basically exactly like it says, the further you go up the ladder, the less you remember where you came from. And it makes communicating harder, and the intent is lost with the interpretation. And when it was, I had a 3-month, a 4-month, and a 6-month program. And 9 times out of 10, I would get done with these men and women, and they would ask me, do you have anything like this at home? Like that you do for, I was like, no, I'm not that kind of, and I didn't want to touch anything like that. But the more I had to figure it out in my own home, the more I realized the questions they were asking me about what I could do, it wasn't so much, oh, can you teach me how to do this at home? It was more about they didn't understand how to communicate with each other, living in these kind of roles they've been put into. Now, I believe that this is a common phrase, but the way I used it with my work is it was very much acceptance without permission. They accepted the roles, but nobody like explicitly asked, hey, do you want me just to go to work? Do you want me just to stay at home? But these are the roles that, you know, you accept kind of in silence and just go on that way. And I think when it starts like that, it's much more difficult to define questions like, well, who was supposed to do what? And what's wrong with this? Where are you spending your time when this happens? And those seem completely innocuous, obviously. But what it comes down to is the conversations that keep coming back usually turn into the arguments that never get solved. Now, these are usually around two capable people, two very successful people, and they're just communicating about different parts of their shared life. And so what they're usually arguing about are topics like money, dishes, time spent away, schedules, the tone of the conversation, and those are really not what's happening. What the arguments are usually about like fairness, recognition, and just whose work counts more in that moment. And sometimes when there's enough disagreements around particular topics, the trust isn't always as strong as they would like it to be. And so I had to fix all that. Well, not fix. I had to solve some of those same problems for us in my marriage, or I chose to. And I was able to, through the experience I was getting and what I was learning about people in that situation, create the conversation course method. And yeah, I mean, the conversation course method was supposed to be a super fun 10-question lead gen quiz. And then I spent a month learning how to do SQL and code and logic and questions. And then I had to research things like the Gottman Institute and people who had been doing things in the same way, but not really saying this about the people I was working with. And it was a very intense month.
Well, we have a question here for you, Amber, and it is from Debbie. And was there one defining moment that changed the direction of your work?
Yes. So about almost exactly maybe a year in, I think, I was working in my company. The initial vision was just a coach. And my husband had been taking care of our daughter at that time. He was doing some redefining of what the company was going to be doing. And so he was taking Penny into camp. He was getting her ready for bed. He was getting all the food ready. He was getting the pets done. And he was doing all this and just kind of running around. And I came home one evening and he was on the couch. It seemed perfectly fine. I think even Penny had already went to bed. And he goes, hey, I'll give them the rundown, what's been done, just so they know that you weren't doing nothing all day. And it's not like I asked for it and he never asked for it, but the obligation to give it is still there. And I recognize that. And he goes, can I just take like a little time? I didn't want to just go because Penny is asleep, but I didn't want to leave her alone. Can I just have some time to myself for a little while? And I heard him say it, but it was like one of those things where I have said it in my head 1,000 times, and I didn't always ask for permission. I would feel bad, or if he was really tired, I just wouldn't say anything at all. Not that he ever encouraged me not to do that. And I was like, of course, you don't get to leave. That's the thing about this position. You don't get to go anywhere. You don't get a paycheck. You don't get like a list of the jobs you'll be doing. You just get to do them. And then I get to come home from whatever I was doing, which I really, really love. And you're the one asking me if you can take a little time, please. That's exactly it. And he just, he got to be like, he's just like, I just had no idea. And that was, I was like, okay, maybe there's some things that I could potentially do with this topic. Yeah, that was the moment though, where I was like, maybe this isn't as explored as I thought it was.
So we have a question here from Ariel for you, Amber, and it's, why do you think people avoid difficult conversations even when they know they're necessary? And it kind of continues from what you were just sharing. So
yeah, sometimes it stems from a need to be right. Sometimes it stems from a need to win the argument. But the things that happen around the conversations that never get solved is they usually have a predictable ending of not getting solved. And when I really had to challenge myself, I was like, okay, so then what happens after Jake and I kept not solving it? The pattern was, we're both angry. We both were heard. He came at me. I came at him. He knows I'm not happy with what he said. I know he's not happy with the way this looks. Okay. And then that was it. And it's not something you mean to do, but it's something that compounds over time. It is very much, I guess I never thought of it this way. The argument starts to small, but it accrues interest over time.
And well, it's kind of like an investment, right? You have to pay the investment on it.
Yeah, you have to pay to protect the pattern that whether or not it gets solved, you two are still okay for the most part. It still doesn't mean that it won't bleed out into other areas. It just means for that moment, you're going to move forward. You're going to be together, sit on the couch, do whatever it is you do. But the thing is, it happens in one moment and one day. And then maybe a year later, it happens. You start kind of bracing for that conversation a couple days later. And years after that, if it's around something like the credit card, and a lot of people assume that, in these situations, there's a lot of accountability around where the money goes. And the reality is there's a lot of responsibility about what gets done. And then a lot of times you kind of have to justify where the money went. And people may be thinking, I would never stand for that. Well, me either. And here we are.
Really?
But when it's about something like that, everything turns into something small. And if you go take your kids and you get, lunch, or you pick up something for yourself, it turns into this, not hiding, but it's definitely not disclosed at the end of the day. It's not because you want to hide anything. It's because you feel guilty no matter what. Yeah. And there's just so many things that go into it over time that it never even touched in the beginning. Not that it was ever easy to solve, but it was simplistic in nature. And now it's got characteristics of its own. This is not an argument you can't solve. This is a problem in your relationship. But like any other problem, you can avoid it for as long as you can. Maybe not as long as you want to, probably much longer than you should. But you don't have conversations that are hard because they're painful and they're tiring. And there's no guarantee that either of you are going to be happy. So if you're both unhappy and angry, and you know that you can get over unhappy and angry, that's okay. But it doesn't end that way if it keeps going that way.
Absolutely. And when we have to break the patterns, it's hard because we're so used to a pattern, right? It's like taking a missing link, like a Lego piece out, and saying, you know what, that piece doesn't go in there anymore. So that pattern needs to be broken. So Amber, how do you break the patterns?
I ask good questions. I have no dog in the fight, first of all. I'm not a therapist. I'm not a counselor. I'm in no way, shape, or form a clinician. I am merely a practitioner who saw a problem and created a way to help people solve it themselves. Usually people now will take the assessment and they'll kind of get a feel for what I do. Before, it was a lot on referrals, and I had a handful of questions. What's your role in the house? Do you guys fight about anything in particular? Do you keep having the same fight about one thing? Okay, what is that one thing? And then it kind of rolls from there. But people who have an established way to have difficult conversations recognize what I do, and they're like, no, we don't have that problem. Even if the problem is small, if they see what I do, they're like, can I ask you a few questions? Absolutely. So I don't wave a magic wand. The assessment helps a lot. And sometimes I'm not the right fit for them, and they should absolutely be in therapy. But I kind of use the barometer, like if I meet with someone and they should be with a therapist, I tell them, look, you might have, confusion about what I do. Like if a therapist is a surgeon, I'm more like a physical therapist. I'm going to give you the tools you need that if you ever need to go to therapy, it's super easy to have a conversation, or easy enough. But I ask good questions. I'm not like so hungry for anything. I'm going to just take on everybody. And I don't want to fix people. I want to help them help themselves. But in the original roles I made this for, there was definitely a role that was louder than the other. So I just kind of recognized it by who was at work and who was at home. And now it's more complex, but the people coming to it honestly are open to a conversation, and I ask good questions.
Absolutely. And COVID changed a lot of relationships because there's a lot of changes in the home, right? Like the dads were staying home, the moms were going to work, or everybody was staying home, at some point, and you weren't used to having that much of time together, right? So it kind of threw everybody off balance. It turned a lot of relationships upside down as well. We have some questions that are coming in that I want to get to you, but I want to get to the assessments as well, because you have 2 assessments that I want to talk to you about, Amber. From Richard is, how did you become a mother influence your perspective on leadership?
I'm not sure that my being a mom influences my leadership. I actually talk about this a fair amount with my clients, because sometimes, not all the time, they have things from their childhood or past that stem from things from their parents, and I try to keep that really separate. I never had a phase, thankfully, kind of in life where I was afraid to be assertive or say, this is what I want. I was raised in a very, like I said, aggressive, loud, just, you can be whoever you want. And for better or for worse, they really tested that theory, my family. And I didn't have to be anybody else. And my dad was very clear. You're not any worse or anything that anybody says you are. You're just as good. You stand right there. You don't have to do anything. And I was smart. I am smart. So it wasn't so much about what people could do to me or to intimidate me, because that doesn't work. It never has. My approach to being a mom is not that. My approach to being a mom, much to the dismay of my oldest child, is different to both of my kids, because I was 24 when I had my first child, and it was unplanned for so many reasons. And it wasn't even with someone I was in a relationship with. And then I'm 36, having a child with my best friend of 20 plus years, who I happened to be married to, who it took us a really long time to have a child. So my my response to mothering is actually a little less calm. I don't always know what to do. And quite frankly, in my house, I have the more hot temper. It's not the worst temper in the world, but I am definitely the first one there every time. So I try not to do that. But I think I will hopefully one day be a good example for my two girls. My daughter, she's in her 20s. I'm sure she has a lot to say about me, and I'm super excited for her to be in her 30s. That's all I know about that one. And my 8-year-old, she loves me and she thinks I'm awesome and she wants to hang out with me. And sometimes that's the best thing ever. And sometimes it's something I have to remind myself I will miss.
Yeah.
So.
Well, we talked about this the other day when we had our little chat, right? Our little chat that lasted almost 2.5 hours.
For that 15 minutes.
Right? But you know what? People think that, you know, our mom roles have a lot to do with our leadership roles. And I'm with you, Amber. I don't think it has anything to do with the leadership roles. I think it has to do with the example, the role model example, but the leadership role, I don't think it has very much to do with it. We have a question here from Golf Tips. What's one communication habit that creates the biggest positive change?
Answering the question honestly, listening, stop waiting for your turn to talk. And I am guilty of that even now sometimes, but in a serious conversation, I remind myself that I love this person, that I'm choosing to be with this person. And in this way, my leadership has changed. I've become a better, what I think is friend, wife, and mom, because I'm no longer quick to be the one who has to prove a point or I'm right. I have to remind myself that I need to listen, and I need to listen honestly. And whatever comes out, I want to make sure that I remember as much as they remember that I love them. I don't want to hurt their feelings. There are plenty of people's feelings I want to hurt out in the world, and I have no problem doing that. But you never want to hurt your kids. You don't even want to hurt, like you never really want to hurt your wife or your husband. Like I joke all the time about hurting my husband, but it is a joke.
Yeah. It's part of marriage life, right? And sometimes people take it so literally that we want to hurt our spouses. But you know what? Sometimes we just want to wring their necks. Like,
yeah, no. Jake and I had to have a starting off point for everything. And it's much easier to be judgmental of other people's relationships, but I had to be honest about my own. And even after creating my assessment, I had him take it. And then I took it honestly. I didn't have I had been very lucky to be around reliable groups of people for a decade, not in a clinical way, but in a way where they shared freely. And I write everything down. Even today, I just use, and I have hundreds of stacks of just notebooks. And yeah, it's hard, isn't it?
It is. Well, Amber, I want to get into the assessments you have, because you have the fight that keeps coming back is a 6-week workshop. Is that workshop still going on? Because I noticed that it was back in May.
I don't have, we had just gotten done with one. Actually, no, that one is new. We had one cohort, but that's a new one because it's one I do with my husband. It's the only one I do with my husband. We do it together. And it is much easier for a male and a female to listen to a male and a female. And I recognize that. And I've had individuals that I've coached for 6 months, like an individual wife and husband, but I didn't have a whole lot of groups. And I realized in that group, one person would feel like polarized, like, oh, they're just talking about me in front of me. And it was the male group. So I was like, okay. I asked my husband, I was like, you're familiar with my work. You would probably have to get super familiar with it, but I use this every day. I tricked you when this happened because he was my guinea pig for a year. And he knows that now. But there's a lot of things in there that people don't know, and even he was surprised about. But it just goes over once a week, and you meet once a week with 6 to 9 couples, depending on who they are and what the organization it's for or anything like that. And once a week we meet, usually on a Friday or a Saturday. It's 3 hours, which sounds like a lot, but it always goes over. And my husband and I, we do that. Each couple gets an hour alone with us. And at the end, you have like a little booklet of the things we've talked about. And if you ever forget, you have a personalized handbook on maybe how to remember how to talk about those things. And the 6-month one is bigger than the 6-week one, but the 6-week one is actually the easier of the two, but one's a longer version of the other.
So you have a 6-week and a 6-month one.
I have a 6-month one. I have a 6-week one, which is the fight that keeps coming back. The 6-month one is much longer and in depth. And then we have something called the realignment lab, which is short, 1 day. And then we have individual separate types of workshops we do for organizations. If there's any organizations that have multiples of the kind of couples we want to work with, my husband and I do individual, specialized, unique workshops for them.
Well, Amber, let's talk about this. This question came in as, what inspired the Fight That Keeps Coming Back ebook? So tell us a little bit about this ebook.
People kept asking me, well, what makes you the expert on this? Well, I'm not, and clearly neither are you. But I do have some experience with the topic. And so that's where I had to start. I needed to give people some space to learn about what this was and why it was there at all. I talk about what happened with me and my husband, how he's been my friend for over 25 years, and we'll celebrate 12 years of marriage next month. And, you know, I think I wanted people to know that this isn't me saying, oh, I figured it out, because that's not what happened. What happened was my husband had to declare business and personal bankruptcy, and we had to look at each other and figure out what do we do? And I think people assume organized people have an organized strategy, but no one can give you an organized strategy for that. Or there are people who talk about it in like platitudes and like, you'll get through it. I went through it. Actually, anybody telling you that, that's bullshit. They're going to get through it. It's going to be okay. But none of that is easy. Like, it's super hard.
Yep.
And you don't want to make anybody feel bad, but you also have to make the honest decision to talk about the hard thing that you know will make the person feel bad. And it's playing jump rope through a minefield. Whereas before you were maybe walking on eggshells. It's so much bigger on a bigger scale, and you're blindfolded. Like, it's not like that at all. And the fight that kept coming back was we didn't know how to solve anything because we were only solving it one way. And that way only worked for who we were before. We had to figure out how to do this now. And it's not even a figure out. Like, it wasn't like me versus him, or I have to fix us or anything like that. It was, I couldn't expect someone who's going through the loss and the grief and like the highs and the lows of having a new business and still working with what's happening with the old one. Like, I wasn't about to have him juggle all that. And that was an assumption on my part, but that's just the way that happens when you truly love someone and respect them. Like, that dude is my best friend. I have another best friend. Her name is Tiffany. I have 2 people I love in this world that I'm ready to just fight anybody over. Like, I don't even care. So the fact that I can take a lot meant I was willing to, and I did it and no one asked. But people want some proof. So I provided a little bit of my research, and I gave them a very simple outline of how we use it. And at the very end, not at the beginning, because I don't want people to, well, I didn't think it would be easier to put how I decided to do this in there. And it's very serendipitous and very strange to me even still. But I was very fortunate and unfortunate all at the same time. And the fight that keeps coming back comes in at the beginning of a little package of 2023 being the worst year of my adult life. My father, who had raised me as a single dad, like my mom, she couldn't be around, passed away 2 days after my birthday. Then my husband declared business and personal bankruptcy. One of my favorite people in the whole world, who I had known forever, passed away, and he just didn't wake up from an embolism one day. And then my mother-in-law got uterine cancer. And my husband had a person with a significant role who was getting ready to have a lot of stake in their company and decide that maybe they didn't want to do that. And that was from February to October. And so in October, there was a sale on something, and it was unassuming. It was just 365 days of positive affirmations or something like that. And up until that point, I was a firm believer in realism, and that's pretty much what I told people. And it was really more of a pessimistic outlook with a pragmatist approach and a lot of humor. That's really where I led my life with, and I couldn't do that anymore. I couldn't make comments about what was happening. I had to be able to see a possibility, and I was lost and sad, and I didn't want to make that anybody else's problem. So I saw this little thing of 365 and I was like, you know what? Why don't I just read this one thing every day? And honestly, with that, something happened where a person who we don't speak now, I wish them no ill will, obviously, but they showed me the possibility of what happens when someone takes interest in helping someone else. And that's what led to everything else. So, like you can see, it's a lot of different things, but that ebook is just a smaller portion of the larger manuscript that I'm giving out on the internet little by little. But yeah, inspired, it was more like obligated if people didn't want to keep hearing me talk about it so much, but everything inspired that.
Well, Amber, let's talk about the conversation core assessment. We have a question here from Kathy, and it's, how does the conversation core assessment help people communicate differently?
Well, I can't make anybody do anything. It helps them help themselves. I can influence, I cannot control. It asks them 16 questions for multiple choice, nothing too difficult in terms of question answer. And at the end, it gives you an output of your primary core, which is generally how you show up to have a civil conversation. Honey, I want to talk to you about the credit card bill this month. Okay, that's fine. That's who you show up with. And not that it happens every time, but sometimes it turns into a civil conversation and you go, all of a sudden somebody says something and you go, excuse me, what did you just say to me? And it comes something completely different. And that is your secondary core. And both have their positives and their negative reactions. And you get details on what those are. And if your spouse takes that with you, then you're able to see where you guys match up. On the initial assessment, you will have to provide your email and you'll get sent your preliminary output. But if you'll have choices where you can email me, you can say you want more. There's a much longer assessment for the two of you to be had that you can use on your own. It isn't free, but it is, I will say, helpful. And then it goes from there. But sometimes I still find myself asking, if I could just know what to say right now, that would be great. And so I kind of created that because I just didn't know what to say sometimes.
And Amber, we have a question here from Michael. What's one conversation people should stop avoiding today?
I think people know. I can't tell you which one or one you don't know, but everybody definitely knows the one they're not having. The one you're avoiding, you're dreading, you're having, and then you're not solving. Whatever that pattern fits is probably that one.
So Amber, how does childhood experiences shape adult relationships and leadership?
So that's like the atomic bomb, right? Let's just walk through that. Like I said, I'm not a therapist. I am fortunate to have an amazing therapist who still agrees to see me sometimes. That's about all I know about that. And your childhood, somebody told me something once, and it says you're either running towards or away from something in your childhood. And I think that's probably true. You might be super aggressive because your parents were super avoidant, or you're super aggressive because your parents were super aggressive, like mine. You may not want to talk about discussions around death or body image or how people see you. Do you have to be strong versus nurturing? Do you have to be a leader versus, a manager? There are so many things that shape you, but it's also how you choose to deal with them once you're no longer a child. Your childhood shapes you in a way that nothing else will, because you're the only you. That much is true. But I don't know of a secret recipe that allows somebody to be a well-nurtured adult because their mom and dad went through this sacred ritual where they know how to respond to things. They know how to regulate their emotions. They understand financial difficulties. They can do math. They have account like that. None of that is actually a thing. But I can tell you, certainly, that no matter what your childhood is, if you continue to make excuses for bad behavior and you continue to have bigger roles where your decisions have bigger consequences, then you're just a bigger asshole. Or you are an asshole and you decide maybe this isn't what's going to be. And you make decisions to understand that. Now, you either do that in a professional setting, you do that through leadership development. However you do that, you continue to be curious about, okay, if I'm the problem, because remember, we can only control ourselves. I can point my finger at everybody else, but nobody got me to sit down right here and made every single decision I made except me. I can't blame anyone. It may have been a hard decision. It may not have been a real decision at all to some people, but I always had a choice. And people have to take accountability. And that kind of determines, yeah, your childhood sucked. And believe me, I get it. But you don't have to be your parent's child all the time. And if you're making excuses, that's pretty much your leadership style. Something goes wrong, it was such and such. Something goes wrong, oh, you know what, maybe it wasn't clear, or help me work on how this happened and let's make a solution for it next time. Like, just being able to understand that people make mistakes. Your company isn't perfect. And as much as we would all love to believe like quality control is really the real problem, it's not. It's people control, and that doesn't work either. So good luck on that question. I hope I gave you some insight to it, but the only thing that shapes us is the things that we let shape us. And then as we get older, we either make excuses to why they're there or reasons why they're not.
And Amber, I like the name of your business, Battle Insights, because we're battling ourselves inside all the time, right? And until we get the insight of who we truly are and take accountability and responsibility, like you said, stop making the excuses. We can't blame mom and dad for the rest of our lives. We have to grow up at some point, and the communication skills that we have with our partners and our loved ones, has a lot to do with our childhood, because that's what we were probably shown, right? That's the pattern again. So we have to break that pattern. And that's what we talked about the other day when we talked for a while. It was the breaking those patterns are not easy, but we have to break those patterns. And we have to sometimes say, you know what, you're not good for me. You're just going to have to go over there.
Yeah. And we talked a little bit about this. I had a unique, well, I had a traumatic childhood, but I'm putting that in the sense of I know my trauma. My trauma is not better or worse than anyone else's. It's not about that. But when I tell people I had an aggressive communication style growing up, well, my dad worked for a particular type of organization, a family organization that may or may not have ended up in some legal hot water sometimes. And he did that for 20 years before I was born. And then sometimes these people choose to take responsibility and they have to go to a correctional facility for some amount of time. And then when they get out, they're still that same person and there's a choice to be made.
Absolutely.
And what happened when my dad went to one of these correctional facilities with my mom is harrowing, and we don't have enough time for those trigger warnings. But I was able to then go with my dad, not because I was like, hey, I would really like to go live with my dad now, but because my mom had a difficult time with me as opposed to my three sisters. And she dropped us off for the weekend with my dad's best friend, who she had never really wasn't in a relationship from that point forward. And I lived with my dad since then. I didn't know she wasn't going to come back, but she didn't. And we were really poor, and we lived in South Florida. I mean, really poor. People wouldn't bring their kids to our house. I didn't realize that, though, because you don't know as a little kid, like, what the perception of ordinary or safe or normal is. This is just your life. And it wasn't easy. Summers were really hard because there was no free lunch. We did a lot of fishing off the pier, and that's what we ate. Sometimes we just didn't eat. And then this entire time, my father is an insulator. He's getting involved with the union. He's getting involved with politics. And, we're these little kids. I was 8 and 9 years old. My little sister is a year and change younger than I was. She was there too. And we're going along through this. And I've never seen shows about any types of these organizations that have such close family ties in them. But from what I understand, they're pretty accurate in terms of aggression, honesty that's aggressive. And, my dad, for better or for worse, this is kind of how he raised us. Like, we were just as good as anybody else, but as kids, and not as kids who has a mom that can be, take away the kids from all this. That's not what happened, because you have to make ends meet, and you have friends that can help you make ends meet. And that's where we were. And so that kind of shaped my communication style, which has gotten less aggressive, but it's still me. Like, you don't escape your childhood all of a sudden. It's just that a lot of people who go through everything I went through, and there is so much more. You don't have conversations like this.
Yeah.
There's a lot of judgment, but also there were things that I remembered really had to struggle with in my 30s that I didn't as a teenager, that if I had to struggle with them as a teenager, I probably wouldn't be here. So our childhood puts us where we are.
Yeah. Amber, I want to get into your tea. Your tea that you gave me, I can't say the first word. It's ferocity. Could you tell me a little bit about that word? Because I've never heard that word before.
Oh,
tell me a little bit about that word.
I'm pretty ferocious in whatever. Like, it's in debating people, it's in business, it's in trivia, it's in board games. Like, I am just intense. And The best and worst thing about that is most people, aside from my husband, can't match that amount of intensity for long periods, which is why when I go away and come back, they're always very happy to see me. But as I got older, I know when to go away now. But I am a ferocious friend, mom, wife, partner, leader. Yeah, no, I mean, I could have your back in the grocery store if you're on the right side. Like I don't really have, I have a barometer, but it's definitely, it only works sometimes. And it's like kind of on his last leg. It's like, yeah.
And the second word you gave me was conviction. Tell me a little bit about conviction.
I'm not wishy-washy. Like the intensity that I communicate it may be, but I stick to things. If I believe this, it's what I believe. And I have a viewpoint about it. Now, if somebody wants to grill me on it, good for them, but I don't have a reason all the time. Sometimes I just feel that way. But my convictions are rooted in things like facts, science, situations, learning everybody's perspective, not just my own, even if I disagree. And I think that makes for a great place to have convictions. But I'm also just fiercely and stubborn. Like, I don't always agree with people who agree with my ethics, but, you know, I stand by them in the face of adversity, and they're probably different than what most people would think, but I don't feel the need to change a lot, not because I don't believe in change, but because I know who I am.
And the last word you gave me for your T was reckoning.
So we talked a little bit about this. Where I grew up with my father, there wasn't a lot of spirited debate around disagreements. It was you were or you're not. And that's just what it was. And when I saw your thing and responded, I was like, what is something that I do that I have control over, but I choose not to control it? And I will reconcile with people who I have no business doing anything with. And it scares a lot of my friends. I'm pretty sure it scares my husband, and my daughter has had to stop me in a Target. But I will confront things, mostly people, that other people are too nice to confront, especially if it's happening to multiple people. Like, I have no problem being the person in front doing the thing that no one else wants to do. And I like that about me. Sometimes it scares people, not in a good way. And that's not my intent, but I get their perspective. Like, I'm much more discerning and I make grown-up decisions. But even as, in my early 30s, I did not make as discerning and grown-up decisions. And I could take matters into my own hands when I didn't have to. And while that may still happen, it happens less in things like Target. Less.
Well, I think it's a strong T. And, I learn always something from the guests. Like I learn new words, understanding of words. I never heard that word before, the ferocity.
Yeah, it's like what they say about lions. They're ferocious.
Okay.
People are scared of me. Like
I told you, I have like a cheap moment.
Good. Like, I don't know what to do with that though. But it's definitely, if I asked a lot of people, is she scary? Yeah. But I don't know what that means.
So Amber, let's talk about the thing that you sent me just before we went live. I'm going to pull it up for all of the viewers out there to take a look at. I'm just going to pop it up here so we can talk a little bit about this. So what's on the screen here?
Yeah, I decided, and people were like, why are you even going to be on that podcast? I was like, I don't know. It sounds like a lot of fun. But I wanted to make sure that if people had wanted to have a conversation or had more questions, they didn't just have to message me on social media, which they're more than welcome to do. So I created something called a 1-week reset. And if you're listening to me and you're like, maybe she knows what she's talking about and would like to know more, I will be giving Miss Liz a link to sign up. It's 3 sessions that are 45 minutes. And what that is we're going to talk about the argument that keeps coming back for you. What is the one thing that you cannot get over? And we're going to talk about that, not how you feel necessarily about when one person says this and then you say that. That's not how that works. You'll take the assessment, we'll go over it, and then we'll go over how each of you can maybe start to look at this argument and others in a different manner. And usually that's a $350 offering, but for you, and because this was just fun for me, I'm going to make it $39.95, and I will provide you with the link for the payment link, and you can put it wherever you want. I'll put it on my social media, but this is something special just for Miss Liz because I really like her.
Well, I really like you too, Amber. And we had a good talk for 2.5 hours a couple days ago. I always do my best to have my guests understand what Tea Time is all about and just be themselves. And I love that Amber is herself and she comes to the table, saying, I'm not a coach, I'm not a therapist, and I'm going to just give you the straight up answers. We have 2 more questions here for you that I'd like to get out. And one's from Ariel, and it is, how do you encourage people who are afraid to speak the truth?
I don't know.
In your home and in your surroundings, Amber, how do you encourage people to speak the truth?
Get around people who you feel safe around speaking your truth. Challenge yourself on what that might be. Be willing to be uncomfortable with people being uncomfortable about what your truth is. I can't tell you how many people I've seen who will stand up for themselves in any particular situation except one. And you would never think that about that person. So afraid to speak their truth, or not quite true in that moment, that relationship, or that time, what being your true self shows up as. That's a question you have to ask yourself. You have to be honest with yourself, and you make the best decision for you. I'm not saying that if you're truly like a leader of people, you go into the boss and tell him to eat shit, and that's what's what, and don't worry about your family. That's not what I'm saying. But maybe the safest version of that is still possible. But you find people who you feel safe around. You can even practice showing up in your truth around the people you feel safe, and then branch out from there. But knowing what you're willing to lay down in front of someone and draw a hard boundary, like, this is who I am. I'm not sorry that you don't feel this way. It's unfortunate, but I am not responsible for your feelings. Your feelings are not facts. And as a matter of fact, this is who I am. That's how I approach it.
And the last question we have for you, Amber, tonight is, what's one lesson business leaders often overlook about communication?
I'm trying to be diplomatic about this.
You be you.
I'm not sure I could be any other way. Okay. Business leaders miss about communication. Who and how they're communicating to them. Initially, and there are people and leaders who don't do this. This isn't 100% of the time. But as time goes on and leaders get more responsibility, they kind of forget that they're having a conversation. They talk at, they don't talk with. And then, even if they're just doing that work at work, they bring that home. And they miss it because at the end of the day, the person they're coming home to is tired. They are not your babysitter. And they love you and they want to spend time with you. But you need to miss them with that, all right? And then they go to work, and the people who are working so hard for them, or even the managers who are just have to deal with the boss, are like, Jesus Christ. And they miss it because it's not about the people around them. It's about them. And I hate to tell you, real leaders don't think it's about them at all. They don't wake up and they're not like, shit, I got to deal with so-and-so. This is going to suck. They're like, okay, I have to do this. I get to do this. I wake up the same way. I'm not perfect, but a real leader doesn't ask, what do I have to deal with today? They should be asking, how do I get these good people to continue to do good things so I can continue to lead them? And then they need to go home and share this. They don't need to do anything, but I would encourage them to go home and ask themselves, how can I make the most of the time I have with this person? All leaders forget about communication, that the other person has to be willing to be in a conversation or relationship with you. And if you make it really hard to do that at work or at home, you're going to be alone. And eventually, and I promise you, there won't be enough money for an honest person to be around you. And then you really are alone, just surrounded by a bunch of people. So I'm not going to say be nice. Be honest in a way that would make you want to come back, not in a way that would rouse you to be more motivated or challenges you. Be honest in communicating with the people you respect, and they will respect you back. Because a lot of people, as they get higher up on that ladder, respect one thing, and it's not the people around them.
Absolutely. So Amber, what's your final message to the listeners tonight? And if you could just spell out your website for all the audio listeners.
My website is easy. It's battlesinsights.com. And my final message, the argument is never about the argument. And if that keeps coming up for you, re-examine it, communicate with honesty, and remember the person that you're having this conversation with, you love them. And if that's not the thing you can remember because you're so angry, and remember, I hear you. I am angry, but in the most productive, loving way possible. Then go maybe explore how to lessen the barrier that keeps you from moving forward with a resolution instead of resentment.
Well, thank you so much, Amber. It is a pleasure to have you back. It is a pleasure to see you again. It's been so long since I've seen you.
I know. I feel like it's been like weeks, months, years to say.
But I want to thank you.
Exactly the same.
Right. I want to thank the audience that joined in, threw your questions in, and asked and brought the conversation to life with us tonight on Tea Time. We're just going to do a quick wrap up of what tonight's Tea Time is, and we'll be back on Thursday, and we'll do this all over again with 2 new guests. What an enlightened conversation we've shared tonight. Amber, thank you for bringing your wisdom, leadership, and thoughtful perspectives to the Tea Time table. Tonight's conversation reminded us that conflict doesn't have to create separation. When approached with intention, empathy, and curiosity, it can become the beginning of stronger relationships and better solutions. We explore communications, leadership, human behavior, and the importance of recognizing the patterns that keep us divided so we can intentionally choose a different path. One of tonight's greatest takeaways is this: real change begins when we stop trying to win the conversation and start trying to understand the person. Through your work at Battles Insight, you've shown us that lasting transformation happens when we replace assumptions with curiosity, judgment with compassion, and division with meaningful dialogue. As we close tonight's Tea Time, I'd like to leave everyone with this thought. The next time you find yourself in a disagreement, ask yourself this: am I trying to prove a point, or am I trying to build a bridge? Sometimes the strongest leaders aren't the loudest voices in the room. They're the ones who create space for others to be heard. Amber, thank you for reminding us that understanding one another isn't weakness, it's one of our greatest strengths. Until next time, continue building bridges, continue leading with purpose, and continue serving real life tea, truth, experience, and awareness, one conversation at a time. And tonight's takeaway from myself is every relationship, every community, and every organization grows stronger when we choose connection over division. The bridges we build through empathy, respect, and honest conversation often become the pathway that leads us towards lasting change. And I'll see everybody on Thursday, and we'll do this all over again.